All right, hey there, everybody. This is Tom Mason. You're watching my channel right now, and this is the first time I've ever interviewed someone, so bear with me. But we got a great guest today. His name is Patrick Keith. He's a man of many talents, but you mostly probably are aware of him as being a really good miniature sculptor. So he's worked for tons of different companies, most notably Reaper, Privateer Press, and Dark Sword, but there's many others. And so yeah, Patrick Keith.
Hi. I wanted to say thanks for asking me to do this. It sounds like a lot of fun. So, and I love talking about sculpting and miniatures and stuff anyway. So, hopefully I'll have some interesting things to say. I don't know. We'll see. But
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I thought I would start by just sharing real quick with you guys about how I first met Patrick. So, looking at my notes here. So the very first time I met, the first time I was aware of Patrick, I won't start there, was he entered a pirate girl into the hassle-free miniature sculpting contest. They used to do these. I don't know. Do they still do them, Patrick? They were doing them for a while there.
I don't know. I know they've done like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the one that I sent the pirate girl to was the first one that they had done or not. So
it was pretty early on, but anyways, you placed in it. They bought your sculpt, which was awesome, and it was great.
They named it Patrice. So Patrice the pirate, yeah. So.
From there, it was a couple more years before we actually met. I thought it was at Reaper. I'm sorry, I thought it was at I thought it was at ReaperCon, but you reminded me it was actually at the Gen Con Sculptors meeting, which I really miss. Those were so amazing. But ReaperCon is kind of picked up where that left off in a lot of ways, and in fact, it's probably better because you have more time. There's more sculptors there, and everything.
Yeah, it's a lot more laid-back environment in order to kind of hang out and talk about sculpting. Doing that at Gen Con when they had the little sculptors night, that's what you were talking about. It was just one evening, and they set aside a little ballroom. I think Sandy Garrity was the one that actually initially started doing that. And she would reserve the room and then have everybody come in and have industry people and all that sort of thing. And I remember the first one that I went to, I wasn't sculpting for anybody. Basically it was just kind of like I was a wannabe sculptor, and so I was very nervous, being in there with like all of the other actual sculptors and everything. So it's and that was kind of a weird thing too, going to ReaperCon. You talked about that is, you're sitting in this room with like 12 other, artists, most of whom have sculpted for, the top companies in the industry and everything, and you're sitting there working on your little project, and it's all quiet, and you're thinking, oh, there's Sandy Garrity right there, and well, there's Bobby Jackson and Jason Wiebe, and I'm sitting next to Gene Van Horn, and there's Werner Klocka down at the other end, and it was this weird sort of surreal experience, very early on. So.
I hear you. It was a good time though.
Yeah.
So that was all that way back in 2006. But you have been very busy since then. Just like I said earlier, you've sculpted all sorts of companies. Is there any thing in particular? Actually, just so that's kind of how you got started. You did that contest. I mean, do you want to talk about what you did before that kind of led you into wanting to sculpt miniatures?
Well, I didn't really start out wanting to sculpt miniatures because I've done a whole bunch of different things. I mean, Vicki and I, we did like a comic book series, for a while in like 2000, 1999, 2000, around there. And then I really kind of got into 2D art, and I was really wanting to be, a fantasy artist. And so I painted, I got into doing Photoshop and painting digitally and everything. And so then, I would show my stuff online and tried to get into doing, fantasy, gaming art, basically. And I've done some stuff I did Fantasy Flight's first series of Game of Thrones cards for their card game. I did, 10 or 12 cards or whatever for the first set, and 10 or 12 for the second set. And then I did a bunch of art later on for, Mongoose Publishing. I did some stuff for them. I did some interior work for the Malavoc Press, Monty Cook's game company, where he did Arcana Evolved, did a bunch of stuff in their core rule book and everything. So it just plateaued. It got to a certain place to where it was like, well, my 2D art was only just this good. And I was really having a hard time leveling up, to where it was really, polished commercial, looking work. And about that time, I ran into Ron Hawkins from Reaper Miniatures, who was at Gen Con about that same time. This was about 2005 or so. And I had known him. He was a customer at the game store where I was the manager, and so he would come in and buy miniatures. This was before he started working for Reaper, and so we would talk about painting techniques and all this kind of thing. So he went off to work for Reaper, and I kind of went off and did something else, and so we ran into each other at Gen Con. And so he had asked me if I was doing any sculpting, back, doing any miniature gaming or any of that type of stuff. And I was like, well, no, I hadn't really, thought about doing any of that because I had a little bit of exposure to sculpting with green stuff and all that, a couple of years prior to it. But it was just very difficult. This was before really the internet, or before you could find tutorials, or like all the stuff that you're doing, on your channel where you're showing. It's like, well, here's how to use the materials, how to use the tools. There was zero information out there about any of that stuff. So I kind of went home from Gen Con and thought, well, I'm going to try to give it a try. I'll pull out the materials and stuff and see what I can kind of cobble together. And it was at this time that I made that first the little pirate girl, not the one that I sent to Hassle Free, but really kind of the first one that I named Megan the Buccaneer. And so I took it out to Reaper, and they cast it up for me, and so I put a few of them online to sell them and that sort of thing. And it was just really kind of a hobby. It was something that's like, well, maybe I could make a little extra funds, to buy some gaming stuff or buy some other miniatures with, or all that. So that was when I started looking online and trying to find venues to do sculpting for this or that, and and did the hassle-free contest and that sort of thing. So from there, it kind of grew as I kept posting stuff online. People kept contacting me like, oh, hey, would you like to sculpt some stuff for us? And I can't remember if it was Impact Miniatures or if it was Reaper that I actually sold my first miniature to. But it was pretty much right around the same time. And it was about 6 months after I had gotten back from Gen Con and kind of gotten back into working with green stuff and all that at that time. So that's sort of how I got into the sculpting part of it. It wasn't really like a full-time thing. It was more just like hit or miss, whenever I could try to, find a piece here or there, that somebody wanted sculpted, then I would, I'd do what I could. So.
Well, that's awesome, and yeah, you have definitely kept with it, and it's grown, and you've, like I said, you started basically with Reaper and Impact and many others in between. You've gone into Privateer Press and Dark Sword.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very impressive. Just seeing you from that very beginning until now. So
it's been kind of a long road, and talking about it now, it's looking back. You were saying it was like 2005 or 2006. It's like, wow, that's 10 years ago now, and it's like, wow, it's gone by like that. I don't really think I've been doing this that long. After I had gone through kind of working for a lot of the little, I like to call them third-party companies, because it was like Impact and Roll Jordan and which is now and Grebo Miniatures and that sort of thing. They kind of split off and became two companies. I did a lot of the Blood Bowl figures for them, little teams. I did the Beer Garden Beauty for Impact Miniatures, and Tom says that's their biggest seller, that they have still, and I did some other miniatures for them. I did the Elf team, I think, for Roll Jordan, and so the more of those pieces that I did, and they show up on the internet, then I would get contacted by other people, and so it sort of expanded out from that. So eventually, as I refined working on my stuff, I guess it was at ReaperCon one year. Jim Ludwig at Dark Sword had come to ReaperCon, and he was looking at some of the stuff that I was working on where I had my sculpts and stuff on the table or whatever. And he was talking to the other sculptors about it. I was like, oh, hey, Patrick's stuff is it's looking pretty good now. He's improved, from, some of his earlier stuff and all that. And I had contacted him about 6 months before that and said, hey, if you're looking for other sculptors or whatever, I'd like to do an audition piece or something for you. So he got to kind of see what my sculpting level was at that point, and so I wound up doing a couple of pieces of, I think there was some Clyde Caldwell art, or no, it was Jeff Easley piece, and then I did some Larry Elmore pieces that based on that art, and I guess it was cool enough that he continued to send me more work. So I'm really grateful to be able to work in that capacity. That's a very small, I guess, crew that makes the Dark Sword miniatures. So I kind of like being in that little pool of sculptors to do that stuff.
Absolutely, you definitely have a way with the fine detail and subtle beauty of those figures that line really needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was a challenge at first. I mean, I was sculpting at a certain level, and then the pieces that I would send to Jim, he would send me revisions back where it's like, well, hey, focus on, the faces, were the main thing. It's like, well, we want to make sure that they look like human faces and less cartoony and a little bit more realistic, because some of the other sculptors, like Tom Meyer and Jeff Grace, the stuff that they do it's not as cartoony as some of the other like GW style figures and so forth are, and that was pretty tough at first because I think I went through about 6 months or a year of sculpting a few pieces a month for them and focusing on different areas. It's like, well, I'm really trying to get the anatomy to look like the art. I'm really trying to get the faces to look like the art and this sort of thing. And by that time, I was working for Dark Sword. I was already a full-time sculptor, so I was able to kind of devote a lot of time to, well, when I'm working on these pieces, I'm really focusing on leveling up what these different features are, making sure the eyelids look right, and make sure the noses are the right proportions and these kinds of things. So, and I would sculpt, sometimes I would sculpt a couple of different heads, and then I would pick the best one, and I would send that picture to Jim, and say, well, okay, well, what do you think, and so, but that's not to say that, I didn't have to get the X-Acto knife and cut something off and redo it. It's just that's part of it. But I think that made me a better sculptor, because having a really critical set of eyes that's like, well, I know what I want, I know what this thing to look like, and you get that feedback, then it's not just like, oh yeah, everything you do is cool, it's like, well, that's nice to hear, but to really grow as a sculptor, you need to kind of have very specific things to work on, the feedback that you get. So that was really helpful, and I think that my work has leveled up, because of that. So.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was kind of funny that you say that, because at Gen Con this year, or the past year, I went over to look at the case, and when you look at the Dark Sword display, they have like the big display cases, in front of their booth, and with all the miniatures and so forth in it, and I couldn't find any of mine in there. I mean, it's sort of this wall of painted, they're gorgeous figures, by some of the top painters, in the biz, and I couldn't really pick out which ones were mine because it was all sort of this homogenous kind of style. Wow, that's really great, because that's what you want. You want, all of the figures to kind of fit together, and it was kind of an interesting experience. So.
Very cool. So about how long have you been a full-time sculpting, freelance or otherwise?
Well, I started, like I said, I sold the stuff in 2006 or so. So I was just doing, a couple of figures a month for whoever I could get work for since then. But then it was a weird kind of a situation. In 2009, the help desk that I was working for, they had outsourced our department, and so they were laying us off. And so I thought, oh, well, hey, there's 6 months worth of free money, that I could sit around and play World of Warcraft and not have to do anything. Now, if I was smart, I would have gone and focused on, hey, let me try to find something to do and see if I can, try to get that going. But I didn't. I kind of waited until the last minute. So, and then it occurred to me, hey, I could probably do some sculpting. I could. I guess I was really kind of burnt out from doing anything creative, and I just needed that time off. I had gone back to work for another help desk for about 6 months, and it was really, really hard because the help desk that I came from, I had a lot of latitude. We were a veteran crew. I'd been there 12 years, and it was all like, we've got you locked down. You can't look at the internet. The suits are there all day, and it was just for half the pay. And so I just couldn't take that anymore. And so I was like, okay, well, the only thing that I really made any extra money at was sculpting. So let me see if I can, pull some stuff out and see if I can try to put some clients together. So I contacted Ron at Reaper again. I said, well, I've got some sculpts. Would you guys be interested in taking a look at them? So they looked at like 6 of these little pieces that I had, which were basically, it was the prototypes for the Counterblast stuff. I had a couple of Illyrian guys. I had a couple of prototypes of the aliens and stuff, because I had all this stuff set up that I was like, well, I'm going to start, working on that at some point. And so this was all I had to sell. And so Ron took a look at it. He said, well, they all look great. We'll buy them. So they bought all those and put them into production. And so then I didn't have anything. So I was like, well, what do you have next? And so we talked about it, and I was able to start sculpting pretty regularly for Reaper Miniatures at that point. In addition to trying to, get some of the other clients that I had done a few one-offs for in the meantime and try to get regular work from them. So then it was a matter of like, well, once I've got kind of this stable of regular clients that I can do pieces for, then now I'm starting to kind of look outside of that so I can supplement that, so that if something dries up, with one client, in 1 month, then I'll be able to kind of spread it out and kind of fill out my schedule so that I've always got work that's coming in, so that I can pay bills and that sort of thing. And it's been a juggling act. I mean, it's sometimes there's been really lean months, and sometimes there's been like way more work than I can do, and so something has to get bumped and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I've been full time since I guess 2009 or so as a sculptor.
Very cool. So I was a bad host. I forgot to do one bit of research. But the next thing I wanted to, so you did all this freelancing, excuse me, for all these years, and you still do. But correct me, is a little over 2 years now that you launched the Bombshell Kickstarter? The first one?
Yeah, we did that in, I want to say it's 2013.
I couldn't find the date page just now when I was checking. So, but yeah. All right, so about 2 years ago. So what made you want to do your own thing? You've been doing all this freelancing. I mean, I assume it's kind of like a lot of people in our industry. They either want to make a game or make their miniature. You just had some ideas. I should stop talking for you. You tell me.
Well, it was kind of a lot of things, really. I was already sculpting a lot of female characters, for everybody else. By that time, I had already, done a few pieces for Privateer Press. At that point, the big thing that I did for them, is, as far as female characters goes, was the Druid Gone Wilder piece, which it's kind of one of their convention exclusive things that they only drag out of the closet and sell, when they're doing shows, I guess Adepticon or Gen Con or something like that. So that was a really fun piece. I love the art. I love the design of it. It had a lot of character to it and everything. And I was able to talk Meg Maples into painting one for me that was like the studio model, so I have a copy of it on my workbench. It's just like that one. So, so I was doing all these other pieces, for everybody else, and we played Pathfinder and D&D and that sort of thing. And I would always hear, at like shows or whatever, it's like, oh, there's not any really cool female character models or enough of them, for role-playing games, on the market. And so it was really tough, I guess, for a lot of folks that were looking for a specific kind of a figure for their character or whatever. So I thought, well, this would be kind of ideal because I already do this for everybody else. I might as well, kind of come out with my own thing. And I kind of got inspired because I saw that you had done a Kickstarter for Effigy for your first your little space set, and I guess there was like a dwarf, and there was something else.
I just had a random selection there, a little bit of everything.
but you were one of the first ones that looked at Kickstarter and said, hey, here's an opportunity that is like, well, I can put out my own figures and I can get crowdsourcing for it. So it was you and Impact Miniatures, I think, that I saw them launch a thing. And then there was a couple of others that came along and they didn't fund, and then some of the other ones did fund and all this. And then shortly after that, it was the Sedition Wars thing that just kind of hit, and then everybody sat up and took notice of like, oh, well, I guess, Kickstarter is a viable venue in order to fund this, So so I had already seen, your project and was watching some of the other ones, and we were trying to figure out, well, is this going to be, a thing that's going to help us do what we want to do? And when I say we, it's like, Vicky is in on this with me, because she kind of built the Kickstarter project. And I came up with like, well, this is what I want to do. I want to do a line of female miniatures, and this is kind of what I'm thinking. And so she went and looked at all the other projects, and she built the project and came up with like all the levels and the stretch goals and kind of how we were going to structure it and organize it and all that kind of thing. And she came up with the sidekicks because I had done a few little critters for some of the characters, and I guess a couple of the designs that we had done. I think Betty was one of them, and she had like a little a gremlin, like a World War II gremlin.
That's a really fun mini line within your miniatures line. My boys love it.
Yeah. And it kind of took on a life of its own because during the Kickstarter, we would start throwing out, I did a few doodles of, I think, well, I am this character, and Vicky was like, oh, well, we need to do a panda to go with, like, some of these other characters. And so I would, draw out a little doodle of what I would think this little sidekick guy would look like, and we'd post it as a stretch goal, and they would fund. I mean, it would, people really responded to that in addition to the other things. So it really kind of came out of that, that we have a line of little critter, characters and stuff to kind of go along with that. So those have been a lot of fun too, because they're really fun to sculpt. It's different from most of the other stuff that I do. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that project funded, and we delivered it pretty much on time. We were a little we kind of had to scramble because it's. Reaper was going to do our production for us, and they got hit with like their bones thing, like right at the same time, and so they were, it was like, well, that's not going to work because they're totally swamped with all this. So we wound up moving our molds to Valiant Miniatures, and they've been doing all of our metal and production and resin production and stuff for us since then. So So that's been really great, and that way Reaper could focus on their bones and handle all that sort of stuff. So, um, but it's kind of funny because I still have sculpts in the Reaper bones thing. That's kind of interesting to see too.
So Bombshell was your kind of breakout into, doing a big variety, but then not too much further after, you started the Counterblast line. Excuse me. Which is
Yeah.
a pulp miniatures game. Kind of takes some of those some of the bombshells. I don't know, did they inspire you to do this game, or some of them just happen to fit because you had such a wide variety of subject matter covered in it?
Well, the Babes themselves were kind of their own thing, and so because of what Counterblast is, because it's kind of a pulp sci-fi game that's sort of set in 1955. Some of the pieces that we had done just as part of the Babes line were kind of a natural fit for it. For example, like the character that I just mentioned, Betty, which is she's kind of like a bomber pilot, or that's how she's costumed, and so you very easily you could use that or proxy it in as a Lancer's captain or something like that, for one of your counterblast crews. So, but what we really wanted to do was kind of come up with like a whole bunch of new stuff, that was specifically for counterblast. And this was a sci-fi concept idea that I had, way back. Like I said, I had some little prototype models that I had sold to Reaper around 2009, but some of the sketches and the designs go back to 2005 or 2006, and even the little Illyrian, the eye stalk aliens and stuff, is actually a stop motion animation character that I made when I was in high school, and had done a little short film with this and some other characters, and so he's been around for a long time. And I knew that if I was going to do a pulp sci-fi game that kind of had that sort of feel, I was going to have Illyrians in it because he's kind of got that sort of retro kind of look in a way. So we looked at that and thought, well, there's a bunch of other Kickstarter projects and stuff out there in order to fund games and everything, and this seems to be the venue, for us to do that. So we, put together what we could for the project and put it out there, and we launched it initially with, I think it was a funded goal. It was $60,000 was what we were looking at to produce all of all the models and to do a full color rule book and this sort of thing. And so it got out there for a few days, and then it stalled, and then we had people that were backing out of it. And so we thought, okay, well, maybe we're asking too much or whatever for this. So let's retool it. We'll restructure the I guess the backer levels and the funding goal and all that, and we'll launch it at half that, and then we'll just do this many models and then kind of produce what we can along the way. And so we were able to fund that. We made a few stretch goals and so forth on there, and then production wrapped up like around July, I guess, of last year, so that we could have it in time to take to Gen Con. So we had the book, we had the faction core starter sets, and a handful of some other miniatures and everything, and then we've come out with a few releases since then. So we've gotten a lot of really good feedback from the game. People that have come by and played the demo and everything, the feedback that they've given us on it is it's a lot of fun. It's fast paced, and it captures a kind of feel that's sort of anywhere between Buck Rogers meets Necromunda, which was really what we were going for. So
The world needs more modern Necromunda games.
Yeah. That's fun.
I really enjoyed playing the demo myself, and I can't get enough of those Illyrian dudes. They're so cool. I don't know. There's just something. Maybe it's because I don't know. They're like cute alien dwarves. I mean, but they're not dwarves. They're so much better. But they kind of have that silhouette. Maybe I don't know.
Well, they kind of are. I mean, it was my initial intent to do with them was I was going to really make an Imperial Guard army out of them, And before I was really going to do Counterblast, is I really wanted to kind of like, hey, I'm gonna everything that you find in an Imperial Guard army, well, I'm gonna make an Illyrian to match that, and I'm gonna do this as a thing, and just put them out for me. But then the more that I looked at it, and when I kind of showed them to other people, they were like, "Oh no, dude, you need to make those. Those are really cool looking." So I thought, okay, well then this will be kind of fun, and we'll include them with that. But the concept, even their background, when you read kind of the fluff and so forth in them, they are space dwarves in a way because they're very engineering minded and they're very crafty and tech oriented. And they're good traders and so forth. So they're, very honest, forthright kind of aliens that will always, give you a square deal. Now, as far as like holding a grudge or whatever, I don't know if that's the case or what. But they're kind of short, and all that. So they would proxy well for, a space dwarf, I think. I need to make some in power armor or something like that.
All right. Well, so you're obviously keeping very busy, sculpting for a lot of companies and your own stuff. But so, do you have any upcoming projects, for either Bombshell or Counterblast or anything else exciting you want to tell us about?
Well, let's see. What am I working on? I've got a whole bunch of new clients that I'm doing stuff for. There's a bunch of guys, out there doing Kickstarter projects that are all over the world. I'm sculpting pieces for Shield Wolf Miniatures over in Greece, and
Wow.
it's pretty interesting. They've got some really nice looking art that they've sent me. I've also done some stuff recently for Footsore Miniatures, which there's.
I picked up one of those Birdmen. They're very cool looking.
Oh, did you get one? Okay, yeah. Those
super cool.
Those have been a lot of fun. I've been teasing them that it's like I don't want to do anything with any more feathers for a while, but those guys are a lot of fun to sculpt. And Bill Thornhill and Donald Hauser, those are great guys to work with. They've been a lot of fun to deal with on the projects that they've sent me. So that's been great. I've been doing some stuff recently for On the Lam Games for their Endless Fantasy Tactics game. That's also got some really cool art, and I've been having a lot of fun sculpting a lot of the characters and things for that. So I know that Emily's kind of jonesing for me to get started on some new things or whatever. So she's sending me a little package of art to do on that. The big thing that happened recently was Darksword did their Stephanie Law Kickstarter thing. It's a whole line of Shadowscapes miniatures based on her artwork and all that. So Jim got out, I guess, a few months ago and launched a Kickstarter project for that. And so now all those are out, and I'm finishing up the last, I guess, 3 muses that were left. I think there were 7, no, 6, because there's like 9 muses, right? So I did 6 of those for the thing, and I'm finishing the last 3. So the 9th one is on the workbench right now. So I've got a few details to finish on that. But that's kind of what I'm doing for everybody else. As far as Bombshell goes, we're still looking at doing continuing releases for Counterblast as we can work that into the production schedule. But what I'm really interested in kind of starting on next is the Babes 2 Kickstarter. And I know that we've been kind of promoting that's coming this year. And it's taken me a while to kind of conceptualize what I really want to do in terms of characters for that, because I don't really want to rehash a lot of the stuff that we've already done, and we kind of covered a lot of different genres in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there's been some people that have asked for certain character types, certain character archetypes. It's like, hey, would you sculpt this, or are you going to have this kind of thing in it? And so I'm trying to keep that in mind as some of the things that we want to offer in that. But I know we want to launch it with about 5 or 6 new babes, and then if we go beyond that, then I want to have some art ready to offer as far as a stretch goal or two, if it goes to that. So what I'll be doing is between now and when we get ready to launch that on our Facebook group and on the Bombshell page, I'll be previewing some of those sculpts to let our backers or potential backers have a preview of what we're going to be offering on that Kickstarter project.
Very cool. I'll definitely put a link in the description to all those various places so people can go check it out.
Oh, cool.
All right, that's pretty much everything I had to ask you. Is there anything else you can think of you'd like to talk about?
I think I've plugged all the goodies that I can plug.
Well, hopefully, people got a good sense of where you came from and what it's like to, get started into sculpting. And, if people leave a comment. If they have any other questions, I'll try and answer them. Maybe I can get Patrick to come on and follow up, answer a couple of those as well. Maybe we'll do another interview or hangout, just a more general, casual thing sometime. But I wanted just to kind of, you've 10 years, man. I remember when I first saw you, I had been doing it for a couple of years, and I'm like, oh, it's this new guy. And now, we're both old guys.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy.
That's funny how that works out.
Keep at it.
And then there's these new guys that are coming up, and I'm seeing their stuff on Facebook going like, oh my gosh, why am I not sculpting like that? That's amazing looking. So yeah, that's really funny. Well, maybe if we can do this again, we can talk more about technique and the actual meat of the sculpting process and all that kind of stuff. Because I got stuff I like to talk about and materials and tools and things too.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so,
you have I'll actually put that in the description too, because you have a lot of good resources on your website as well. A lot of cool articles, and you sell a really good starter sculptor kit, which is good, and some other goodies. So, yes, people should definitely go check that out. So, okay, well, thank you very much for coming on, Patrick. It's been awesome. I really appreciate it, and we'll do it again sometime soon.
Great.